The first time I heard my children arguing over my inheritance, I was standing 10 feet away. They thought I was asleep. I was 72 years old. Not dead. But from the way they were talking, you would have thought my funeral had already happened. The house should stay in the family, my oldest son Daniel said quietly. My daughter Claire gave a dry laugh. And by stay in the family, you mean stay with you. That's not what I said. You didn't have to. Then my youngest son Michael asked the question that made me stop breathing for a moment. What about Dad's investment accounts? The room went quiet. I stood in the hallway of the home where I had raised all three of them, one hand against the wall listening. My house, my savings, my husband's investments, even my mother's diamond ring. They discussed all of it. Nobody asked what I wanted. Nobody asked whether I planned to stay in the house. Nobody wondered whether growing old there alone frightened me. And nobody said the one sentence I desperately wanted to hear. Mom is still alive. We shouldn't be talking about this. I quietly went back upstairs. That night, sitting beside the empty half of the bed I had once shared with my husband, I realized something had to change. I didn't want revenge. I didn't want to punish my children. I wanted an answer to one question. If they believed there was nothing left to inherit, would they still show up for me? So I gave my three children one final test. They just didn't know they were taking it. My name is Margaret Bennett. For 46 years, I lived in the same two-story house on Maple Street outside Columbus, Ohio. It wasn't a mansion. Robert and I bought it in 1980 for a price that would probably make my grandchildren laugh today. Back then we had second-hand furniture, one reliable car, and just enough money left after the mortgage to convince ourselves everything was going to be fine. And somehow it was. We raised three children in that house. Daniel was our oldest. Even as a child, Daniel liked order. His school papers were organized. His baseball cards were organized. By 17, he had already created a spreadsheet to compare colleges. Robert used to joke that Daniel had been born 40 years old. He eventually became a financial consultant, married a wonderful woman named Rebecca, and had two children of his own. Daniel was dependable, but he also had a habit of believing that if he understood a problem, he had the right to control it. Claire was 3 years younger. She was almost Daniel's opposite. Emotional, funny, stubborn. She could make you furious at breakfast and have you laughing by lunch. Claire eventually built a successful career in real estate. Her marriage ended after 12 years, and she raised her daughter mostly on her own. Then there was Michael. Our surprise. 7 years younger than Daniel. Michael had always had a good heart. But reliability? That was another story. He forgot birthdays. He arrived late. He changed jobs more often than Robert thought was reasonable. At 38, he still owed me part of the $3,000 I had lent him when his car transmission failed. I had stopped asking for it. Robert used to worry about Michael. You protect him too much, Maggie. I'm his mother. That's exactly what worries me. I used to roll my eyes. After Robert died, I started wondering whether he had been right. Robert and I were married for 42 years. 4 years ago, cancer took him. At first, our children surrounded me. Daniel handled insurance paperwork and helped organize Robert's financial records. Claire came over almost every day. Michael sometimes arrived without saying anything at all. He would sit on the back porch with me because he understood there were days when conversation felt like work. For a while, grief made us closer. Then life resumed. Phone calls became less frequent. Weekly dinners became monthly. Monthly became holidays. I understood. They had jobs, children, mortgages, problems I didn't always know about. But something else had changed too. I noticed it in small moments. Daniel began asking whether I had updated my estate plan. Claire joked more than once that Grandma's diamond ring had better not disappear. That ring had belonged to my mother. When Claire was 16, my mother had let her try it on. I still had a photograph of that moment. Claire holding out her hand proudly while Grandma laughed beside her. Later, my mother whispered to me, "That ring looks like it's waiting for her." Claire never heard her say it. I remembered. And Michael? Michael sometimes asked about Robert's old fishing gear or truck. Nothing alarming by itself. But over time, I began feeling as though my life was slowly becoming an inventory. I told myself I was imagining it. Until Thanksgiving. All 3 children came home for Thanksgiving. For a few hours, Maple Street felt young again. Grandchildren ran through the hallway. Daniel carved the turkey exactly the way Robert used to. Claire complained that I had made enough mashed potatoes for an army. Michael arrived 40 minutes late carrying a store-bought pie. "Please tell me you didn't make that," Claire said. "I personally removed it from the freezer section." We laughed. It was a good day. That's what made what happened later hurt so much. Around 9, the grandchildren left with their parents. I said I was tired and went upstairs. 20 minutes later, I remembered my reading glasses were still downstairs. As I reached the bottom of the staircase, I heard Daniel. "The property alone is probably worth $600,000 now." I froze. Claire answered. "More. A house 3 streets over sold for $650. Michael gave a low whistle. Daniel said, "I'm just saying we shouldn't rush to sell it when the time comes." Claire laughed. "You mean when Mom dies? Keep your voice down." My hand tightened around the railing. Claire continued, "If anyone should have first choice on the house, it shouldn't automatically be you." I never said it should. You always think being the oldest makes you dad. Daniel's voice hardened. "Don't start." Then Michael asked, "What about Dad's investment accounts?" Daniel lowered his voice. "I helped Mom organize the records after Dad died. There was a decent amount." My stomach turned. Claire said, "And Grandma's ring?" Daniel groaned. "Here we go." "I'm serious. Grandma wanted me to have it." "You don't know that. I'm the only daughter." "Congratulations." "Shut up, Daniel." Michael interrupted. "Can we not fight about this until we actually know what's in the estate plan?" Then silence. I waited. Surely one of them would realize how awful this sounded. Surely someone would say, "Mom is still alive." Nobody did. I quietly went back upstairs without my glasses. Robert's photograph sat on my nightstand. Picked it up. "What happened to them?" I whispered. Then I remembered something he had told me years earlier. "Money doesn't change people, Maggie. It just makes certain choices easier to justify." I had argued with him then. That night I wasn't sure I could anymore. But I wasn't ready to condemn my children because of one ugly conversation. I needed to know who they were when they believed there was nothing waiting for them. And I knew exactly who could help me find out. 2 weeks later, I sat across from Thomas Harris. Tom had been our attorney for more than 30 years. He had helped Robert and me with everything from buying a small rental property years ago to updating our estate documents after the grandchildren were born. I told him what I had heard. He listened without interrupting. When I finished, he removed his glasses. "What do you want to do?" "I don't know." "Do you want to change your estate plan?" "Eventually." "Do you want to disinherit anyone?" "No." That answer came quickly. They were still my children. I was hurt. I wasn't trying to erase them. Tom leaned back. "Then what are you looking for?" "The truth." He waited. "I want to know if they still want me when they think there's nothing to gain." Tom frowned. "Margaret, be careful." "I know. Tests like that can damage relationships. So can hearing your children divide your belongings while you're still using them." He couldn't argue with that. We discussed what I could and could not reasonably say without creating unnecessary legal or financial complications. The plan was simple. Over the next several weeks, I would let my children believe my financial position was far less comfortable than they had assumed. I would tell them the investment accounts had lost more value than I expected, property taxes had increased, and maintaining the house was becoming difficult. I wouldn't ask them for money. I wouldn't fake an illness. I wouldn't create an emergency. I would ask for something simpler. Time. One Saturday. Some help. A little attention. Things that had no resale value. Tom looked at me before I left. "What happens if they disappoint you?" "I don't know." "And what happens if they surprise you?" I looked down at my hands. "That's what I'm hoping for." I invited all 3 children to Sunday dinner. After dessert, I placed a folder on the table. Daniel noticed immediately. "What's that?" "Something I need to talk to you about." His expression changed. Claire put down her coffee. Michael stopped checking his phone. "I've been reviewing my finances," I said. "Things aren't as comfortable as I thought." Daniel leaned forward. What happened? Some of the investment accounts have lost more value than I expected. Property taxes are up. The house needs work. Daniel frowned. How much did the accounts lose? That question hurt more than I expected. Not because it was unreasonable. Daniel worked in finance. Numbers were how he understood problems. But I still noticed what he hadn't asked. Are you okay? I continued. I may sell the house. Claire reacted immediately. No, I looked at her. No. You can't sell this house. Why? It's our family home. I waited. Claire realized what she had said. I mean, your home. Obviously. Michael asked quietly. Where would you go? It was the first question about me rather than the property. I haven't decided. Then I told them what I needed. The attic is full of your father's things. Boxes from when you were kids. Christmas decorations. Photographs. I can't safely move some of them anymore. I looked around the table. Could the three of you come next Saturday and help me sort everything? Daniel checked his calendar. Claire glanced at her phone. Michael scratched his chin. Next Saturday? Daniel asked. Yes. I have a client meeting that morning. Claire sighed. I have an open house. Michael said. I should be able to make it. Should. I smiled. Do your best. As they left that night, I stood at the door wondering whether I had already made a terrible mistake. 7 days later, I got my first answer. Saturday morning was cold and gray. At 8:30, I made coffee for 4. At 9, nobody had arrived. At 9:30, still nobody. At 9:47, Daniel called.
Mom, I'm sorry.
The client moved the meeting and I can't get out of it. That's okay. I'll come next weekend. Of course. At 10:12, Claire texted. Her open house had become complicated. She ended the message with, Love you. Rain check. At 10:30, I looked at the 4 coffee cups on the counter. Michael hadn't called. Of course. For years I had defended him. Michael means well. Michael loses track of time. Michael will grow up eventually. Maybe Robert had been right. I poured 3 cups of coffee down the sink and climbed the stairs alone. The attic smelled like dust and cedar. I opened the first box. Daniel's baseball glove. The next held Claire's ballet shoes. Another contained Michael's first grade drawings. There were 40 years of our family packed into cardboard. I found Robert's old fishing jacket. I pressed it against my face. It no longer smelled like him. That hurt more than I expected. I sat on the floor and cried. Not because my children had lives. They were supposed to have lives. I cried because I had spent decades saving things that mattered to people who couldn't spare one Saturday to remember them with me. Then at 11:43, I heard the front door open. Mom! I froze. Footsteps crossed the hallway. Mom, you up there? Michael appeared at the bottom of the attic stairs. His hair was a mess. He carried 2 coffees and a paper bag. Sorry I'm late. I stared at him. You came. He looked confused. Yeah. Then he held up the bag. I also brought breakfast as a peace offering because I know being almost 3 hours late technically qualifies as being terrible. Despite myself, I laughed. Michael smiled. Does that mean I'm forgiven? Start carrying boxes. His smile disappeared. I knew there was a catch. Neither of us knew it yet. But what happened in that attic would change the way I saw my youngest son. Michael and I spent almost 6 hours upstairs. He complained constantly. This box weighs more than I do. No, it doesn't. Emotionally, it does. You've always been dramatic. I learned from Claire. We laughed. Then the boxes started opening. Michael found a photograph of Robert teaching him to ride a bicycle. He stared at it for a long time. I remember this. You cried for 20 minutes. I fell. You fell on grass. I was 6. You were 8. He smiled. Then his expression changed. I miss him. So do I. We found birthday cards, school reports, Robert's old tools, a terrible wooden birdhouse Michael had built when he was 9. He picked it up. You kept this. Your father wouldn't let me throw it away. This thing is a structural hazard. He called it modern architecture. Michael laughed. Then he found a sealed envelope with Daniel's name written in Robert's handwriting. He looked at it. For 1 second, curiosity crossed his face. Then he handed it to me. This is Daniel's. He never tried to open it. I noticed. Later, while carrying boxes downstairs, Michael asked, "Are you really in trouble?" "I'll manage." He put the box down. "I still owe you money." "I know. I'm going to pay you back." "Michael, no. I mean it." I looked at him. He had promised before. Maybe he saw that in my face. "I know," he said quietly. "I've said that before." Then he added, "I don't have much, but if you need help with groceries or bills, tell me." "You don't need to do that. You didn't need to lend me $3,000 either." That silenced me. Before he left, he stood in the doorway. "Mom." "Yes. If selling the house makes your life easier, sell it." I stared at him. "You don't care about the house?" "Of course I care." He looked back toward the living room. "I grew up here." Then he shrugged. "But it's a house." He kissed my cheek. "You're my mom." After he drove away, I stood at the window for a long time. The child I had worried might never grow up had just given me the most grown-up answer of all. But the test wasn't over. A week later, I called each child separately. I told them I had decided I probably needed to sell the house. Daniel responded first. "Before you list it, let me look at the numbers." "Why?" "Because selling may not be your best option." Then, after a pause, "If you do sell, I'd like a chance to make an offer before it goes on the market." I wrote that down mentally. Claire's response was different. "Have you considered putting it into some kind of family trust?" "Why?" "So it stays with us." "With us?" "With the family." Again the house. Then I called Michael. There was silence after I told him. Finally, "Where are you going to live?" "I don't know yet." "Do you want to stay in Columbus?" "Probably." Another pause. Then, "Are you scared?" I closed my eyes. Nobody had asked me that. A little. Michael lived in a small 2-bedroom apartment. His second bedroom barely fit a desk, a bookcase, and a folding chair. Still, he said, "You can stay here." I laughed softly. "Where?" "I'll figure it out." "You'd last 3 days living with your mother." "Probably 2. I smiled. Then he became serious. "But I mean it." That night I called Tom. "I think I know what I'm going to do." "Not yet," he said. "Why?" "Because people are more complicated than a single good or bad decision." I didn't like hearing it. But he was right. And a few days later, one of my children proved it. Every year on Robert's birthday, I visited his grave. The children knew. The first year after he died, all 3 came. The second year, Daniel joined me. The third year, Claire sent flowers. This year, I asked for nothing. I wanted to see who remembered without being reminded. At 10 that morning, I drove to the cemetery alone. I brought yellow roses. Robert hated red roses. He called them flowers trying too hard. I sat beside his grave. "I'm testing our children," I told him. For some reason, saying it aloud made me feel ridiculous. "You'd probably tell me I'm being dramatic." A voice behind me said, "He definitely would." I turned. Michael stood there holding 2 coffees. I laughed through sudden tears. "You remembered?" "Yeah." He sat beside me. We stayed there without talking. 20 minutes later, my phone rang. Claire. Her voice was shaky. "Mom, I just looked at the date." "It's okay." "No silence." "No, it isn't." I heard her start crying. "I forgot Dad's birthday." "You have a lot going on." "That's what I always say." She took a breath. "Are you at the cemetery?" "Yes."
I'm sorry.
This time I believed her. Daniel sent a message that evening. "Thinking about Dad today. Hope you're okay. 3 children." 3 responses. Michael remembered. Claire forgot and admitted it hurt. Daniel remembered but kept his distance. I thought that was the end of it. The next morning, Claire knocked on my door. She was alone. No work clothes. No phone in her hand. She sat at my kitchen table. "I need to tell you something." I poured coffee. She looked around the room. "I've been thinking about what I said when you told us you might sell the house." She nodded. "I kept calling it our family home." "It is." "No," she looked at me. "It was our childhood home." I didn't speak. "It's your home." Her eyes filled. I think I stopped seeing the difference. Then she said, I've been acting like part of your life already belongs to me because someday you won't be here. That sentence hurt. But it also healed something. Claire reached across the table.
I'm sorry, Mom.
For the first time since Thanksgiving, I understood something. Maybe the purpose of the test wasn't to discover which child was good. Maybe it was to give all of us a chance to see what we had become. But Daniel was about to see something too. And he wasn't going to take it quietly. Daniel had helped organize Robert's financial records after he died. He knew more about our finances than Claire or Michael did. Not everything, but enough. And Daniel noticed numbers. That was who he was. One afternoon, while looking through an old file he still had from helping me settle Robert's affairs, he came across a statement from one of the investment accounts. The balance didn't fit the story I had told him. Not even close. He called me. I didn't answer. That evening his car pulled into my driveway. He walked through the front door looking furious. Are you testing us? There was no point lying. Yes. His face changed. You lied to us. I let you believe my financial situation was worse than it is. That's called lying, Mom. He was right. I didn't defend myself. Why? I looked at him. Because I heard you after Thanksgiving. His anger disappeared for half a second, then returned. You were listening? I came downstairs for my glasses. Daniel looked away. I continued. I heard you discussing the house. Mom. Your father's investments. He said nothing. Claire's ring. Mom. And what would happen when I died? Daniel rubbed his forehead. That conversation was wrong. Yes. But this. He pointed around the room. This was manipulation. Maybe it was. Maybe. My voice broke. I wanted to know whether losing the inheritance meant losing my children too. Daniel stared at me. You really think that little of us? I didn't know what to think. I'm your son. Yes. I helped you after Dad died. I handled insurance calls. I organized tax documents. I drove over here every week for months. I remember. Does none of that matter? It matters. Then what exactly was I supposed to prove? I swallowed. That when there was nothing left to organize, protect, manage, or inherit, you still wanted to be here. Daniel went silent. Then he walked out. The door slammed behind him. I sat in Robert's chair and cried. Because Tom had been right. Tests damage people. And for the first time I wondered whether the person who had failed mine was me. 3 days passed. Daniel didn't call. I almost called him twice. Both times I stopped. On the 4th evening someone knocked. Daniel stood outside. He looked tired. Can I come in? I stepped aside. He sat in Robert's old chair. For a while neither of us spoke. Then he said, You owe me an apology. I know. He looked surprised. I shouldn't have lied to you. No, I was hurt. I know. That doesn't make it right. Daniel nodded. Then he looked down. I owe you one too. I waited. When Dad died, I decided it was my job to fix everything. You helped me. I controlled everything. I almost smiled. You did. He laughed once. I told myself it was because you were grieving. Part of it was. Part of it. His face became serious. And part of it was because being useful made me feel less helpless. That was something I had never considered. Daniel continued. Dad was dying, and there was nothing I could do about it. So after he died I managed accounts, insurance, taxes, repairs, anything I could control. He looked around the room. And then I started thinking about this house. My chest tightened. He didn't hide from it. I have 2 kids approaching college. Rebecca and I still have a huge mortgage. Sometimes I looked at this place and thought. He stopped. Go on. Someday this could make things easier. There it was. The truth. Not pretty. Not cruel either. Just human. I'm ashamed of that. I reached for his hand. He shook his head. Let me finish. So I did. I don't want your money. He paused. Then smiled sadly. That's not completely true. I almost laughed. Part of me did. His eyes filled. But I don't want to become the kind of son who waits for his mother to die because it solves his financial problems. I squeezed his hand. For the first time since the test began, I stopped seeing Daniel as the man discussing property values. I saw the little boy who used to check every door twice because he was afraid something might happen to us while we slept. People don't become simple just because they disappoint you. And neither does love. 2 weeks later, I invited all 3 children home.
Iku kapod ruast.
Michael arrived 20 minutes late. Progress. Claire brought dessert. Daniel brought wine. Tom Harris joined us after dinner. The moment he walked in, all 3 children became nervous. Michael looked at me. Should I be concerned that your attorney is here? Yes. His eyes widened. I smiled.
I'm kidding.
That wasn't funny. Tom sat at the table. I placed 3 envelopes in front of my children. I need to tell you the truth. Michael leaned back. Claire folded her hands. Daniel already knew most of it. There was never a financial crisis. Michael stared at me. What? The investment accounts are fine. The house is paid off.
I'm financially secure.
Michael looked at Daniel. Daniel nodded. He already knows? He figured it out. Michael looked hurt. I hated that expression. I heard the 3 of you after Thanksgiving. Claire went pale. I continued before anyone could interrupt. I heard you talking about my house, your father's investments and Grandma's ring. Claire lowered her head. I was hurt. My voice shook. And I wanted to know what would happen if you believed there was nothing left. Michael stared at his envelope. So the attic was part of it. The house. Part of it. Dad's birthday. That wasn't planned. I looked at him. But I noticed. Nobody spoke. Then I said the part 1 had only recently understood myself. I thought this test would tell me which of my children deserved what. I looked at Daniel. Instead, one of you reminded me that responsibility can become control. Then Claire. One of you reminded me that people can fail and still recognize what they've done. Then Michael. And one of you reminded me that being unreliable doesn't mean being uncaring. Michael gave a small smile. I continued. But all 3 of you taught me something else. They waited. Families shouldn't have winners. I pushed the envelopes toward them. And neither should this test. Open them, I said. Daniel went first. Inside his envelope was the letter we had found in the attic. Robert had written it years earlier. Daniel unfolded it. His hands began shaking. I still hadn't read it. It belonged to him. Claire opened hers. Inside was the photograph. 16-year-old Claire stood beside my mother, holding up her hand with Grandma's diamond ring sparkling on her finger. Claire covered her mouth. I forgot about this. I didn't. She looked at me. Grandma let me wear it once. Yes. Then I told her what my mother had said afterward. That ring looks like it's waiting for her. Claire began crying. Michael opened his envelope. Inside was the photograph of him and Robert building the crooked birdhouse. He laughed, then wiped his eyes. This stupid thing. It's still upstairs. Please destroy it. Never. Tom then explained that at my request we had updated my estate plan. Not because anyone had one. My financial assets would eventually be divided equally among my 3 children. A portion would also be set aside for my grandchildren's education. The house was addressed separately, with clear instructions giving the 3 children equal interests and a practical process for deciding whether to keep or sell it. But before any family belongings were sold or donated, each child would have an opportunity to choose things that mattered personally. Photographs, letters, Robert's tools, Christmas ornaments, the dining table, the things whose value couldn't be measured by an appraisal. Claire looked at me. What about Grandma's ring? I smiled. It's yours. She started crying again. Not because you demanded it. I reached across the table. Because Grandma chose you before you ever knew there was a choice. Then I turned to Michael. He looked nervous. Your father worried about you. I know. He thought we protected you too much. Michael looked down. Probably. But I think he'd be proud of you. His eyes filled. You were late. Everyone laughed. Very late. Thank you for clarifying. You still owe me money. More laughter. Then I squeezed his hand. But when you thought I had less, you offered me what you had. Michael looked away, crying now. Finally, I turned to Daniel. You didn't fail because you thought about money. He looked at me. You would have failed if you refused to see what thinking about it was doing to you. Daniel nodded. And I need you to know something too. What? I was wrong to test you without admitting that I was also hurt, lonely, and afraid. For a moment nobody spoke. Then Claire stood and came around the table. She hugged me. Michael joined her. Daniel hesitated. Then he stood too. It was awkward. For adults crowded beside an old dining table. Robert would have made fun of us. I wished more than anything that he could have seen it. I didn't sell the house. Not yet. Maybe someday I will. And if I do, it will be because I want a smaller place with fewer stairs. Not because my children want the equity. A year has passed since the test. Daniel still worries too much. But now he asks before fixing my problems. A few months ago he called and said, Mom, do you want my advice? Or do you just want me to listen? I nearly dropped the phone. Claire visits more often. Sometimes she comes over without bringing her laptop. Grandma's ring is still in my jewelry box. I told Claire she'll receive it someday. She told me, not for a long time, okay? That meant more to me than she knew. And Michael? Michael still arrives late. But less late. He also paid back the remaining money he owed me. Not all at once. A little every month. I never asked. One Sunday he handed me the final $100. There. I looked at it. What am I supposed to do with this? Spend it irresponsibly. So I took all 3 children to dinner. My treat. Sunday dinners return too. Not every Sunday. Real families aren't movie families. Daniel has work. Claire has clients. Michael occasionally forgets what day it is. The grandchildren have school, sports, and lives of their own. But twice a month, sometimes more, somebody comes through my front door. The house feels alive again. Last month, the 3 of them helped me repaint the kitchen. They argued about the color for 45 minutes. Some things never change. Then a few weeks ago, I walked past the living room and heard them arguing again. For one terrible second, I was back on Thanksgiving night. Then I listened. I hosted last year, Claire said. You have the biggest dining room, Daniel replied. That doesn't make Thanksgiving legally my responsibility, Michael said. My apartment seats for if nobody breathes. Daniel laughed. Mom's house. All 3 shouted. No. I stood in the hallway smiling. They didn't know I was listening. Again. But this time they weren't discussing what would happen after I died. They were arguing about where we would all be while I was still here. And that was all I had wanted from the beginning. Before all of this happened, I thought inheritance was simple. Money. A house. A bank account. Jewelry. Property. The things we spend a lifetime earning and a few signatures distributing. I was wrong. At 73, I've learned that the most valuable things parents leave their children rarely appear in an estate plan. It's the smell of Thanksgiving dinner in an old kitchen. The embarrassing Christmas photographs. Dad's scratch toolbox. Mom's recipe cards. A diamond ring that carries the memory of 3 generations. A crooked birdhouse built by a 9-year-old boy. It's knowing which jokes your father told too often. Which chair your mother always sat in. Which floorboard squeaked outside your childhood bedroom. And it's time. Especially time. My children didn't pass my test perfectly. Neither did I. Michael showed up, but he was almost 3 hours late. Claire forgot something important. Then had the courage to admit what she had become. Daniel thought about my inheritance as financial security, then told me the truth even when that truth made him look bad. And I manipulated people I loved because I was too hurt to simply tell them I was afraid. There were no villains in my family, just 4 imperfect people who had forgotten how to talk to one another. Maybe that's what family really is. Not people who never hurt you. Not people who always make the right choice. But people who are willing to come back to the table after they've gotten it wrong. I thought I needed one final test to decide what my children deserved after I died. Instead, that test taught all 4 of us how we wanted to live while we still had time. So if your parents are still here, don't wait for an inheritance to remind you what they gave you. Call them. Visit them. Sit at their table. Ask about the photographs. Listen to the stories you've already heard 100 times. And if you're a parent, don't wait until resentment becomes a test. Tell your children when you feel forgotten. Tell them when you need them. Give them the chance to show up. Because one day, the house may belong to someone else. The money will change hands. The jewelry will sit in another box. But the person who made those things means something won't be sitting at the table anymore. And no inheritance in the world can buy back one more Saturday together. So I have one question for you. If you were Margaret, would you still divide the inheritance equally among all 3 children? Or would you leave more to Michael, the child who showed up when he believed there was nothing to gain? Tell me what you would have done in the comments.